and welcome to Women Who Win, a global media platform to empower women. In this video interview series, we share the inspiring stories of women who have made their dreams reality, overcame all challenges, and have never given up. I'm your host, Tamanna Rai Singh Hani from Santa Barbara, California, and I'm a software engineer by profession. I'm really excited to welcome our guest today, who is Dr. Swati Desai, and she is a psychotherapist and a mindfulness teacher. She did her PhD in computer information system from UCLA. And after having a career as a computer programmer, she went back to school to get a formal education in psychology and mindfulness. So what inspired Swati to make this transition from the logical and practical world of programming to the non-linear world of human psych? Let's hear from her. Hi, Swati. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tamanna. Thank you. Very glad to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you. So Swati, tell us your story, what inspired you to make this shift in your career from the world of programming to the world of psychology?
Okay, that's a great question. Tamanna, I was raised in India, and as you must know, and all women from India who are listening to this must know that when you are good in studies, basically you go into science.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, and I was that time when I was finishing my undergrad, and later computers were new and exciting, and so I got into that. And I did have logical mind, so I did well, and then eventually I came to UCLA and got into ended up getting into the computer information systems operations research math science oriented program, PhD program in UCLA Anderson, and did all that. However, my uh, original inclination was to work with people. I realized I was an extrovert and I really enjoyed talking to people and working with them. And my uncle, who was already settled in the US, who was a Jungian analyst, he introduced me to the psychologist Jung's work. And I was so fascinated. I joined the Jung Institute and I was taking their classes, joining their programs all the time while I was in the PhD program. And oftentimes I wondered how it would be to actually use it and work with people. So after, like doing my PhD, I realized that sitting in the office and doing research was not my cup of tea. And that actually instigated this switch even more in my life. And then I finally, when the time came, I decided I had to explore it. I joined a counseling center as a paraprofessional counselor where they train you. And then you can start seeing people to see if I really like it or not. I loved it. I found it so much more meaningful. So then I decided to go back to school, got my clinical social work degree because I wanted to start working right away. I didn't want to do anything else because clinical social work, in fact, allowed you to do internships and get a job right away. And it was also a training that allowed me to understand the diversity and kind of, not only psyche, but how environment and biology also affects people. So I that's what I did, and then just got into it and eventually started my own practice. Yeah.
So another question, why you integrated mindfulness with your practice of psychotherapy? Like, do you see that your clients showed much improvement, or they preferred mindfulness with the therapy?
Yeah.
How that started?
Right. That's another good question. In fact, Tamanna, what I internally had always connected with some kind of a spiritual path, and I was a seeker. So right from when I was a child, I would pay attention to Bhagavad Gita and all these kinds of things, and I was trying different aspects like Vedanta and different kinds of meditation. So along with psychology, I was also interested in that. And spirituality and psychology, by the way, they really go together. Spirituality can be used as the psychological strength. And Jung combined East and West. And so that was another attractive aspect to me and for me and all that. Eventually, I learned about Vipassana. because of Kiran Bedi, who used Vipassana in Tihar jail, and
Uh-huh.
how the prisoners, they cried and how it made such a big difference in their lives and all that. So in 2004, 17 years ago, or 18 years ago, was the time when I was spending 1 year in India, and I was going through my existential crisis. Like, there was struggles in switching the career. I'd already switched the career. I was already working with psychology. And at that time, I decided I need to explore Vipassana. Once I went to Vipassana, it changed my life. It made everything much more clear to me. And then I found out that mindfulness, in fact, was a field where Vipassana style of meditation was used in a psychological way, in a much more accessible way. And there was a whole field of mindfulness and psychotherapy. So I was so fascinated. I just got into it for 2-3 years. And then I started using mindfulness in my office. I already had a psychology practice in Santa Monica in California. And my practice was in an integrative medicine clinic where Eastern and Western, both types of things were used. And as a result, the people who came to our clinic were already inclined to use Eastern tools. And so mindfulness kind of fit with my clients since they
I
were
see.
already aware of, and I was from India. So that was the reputation that I had.
Okay. Yeah, that
And
helped, I'm sure.
yeah, that helped. And then I started workshops for my clients, like 6 people at a time and all that. And then I started running continuous groups for people who had already taken the workshop, ongoing service and all that kind of stuff. And mindfulness, in my view, as I said, personally, because it was a life-changing experience, it helped me to use that as part of my psychotherapy. And then since that time, that's what I have been doing.
As you use self-compassion,
Yeah,
style of
yes.
meditation. So can you tell
Right.
us more about that?
Yeah, so that is also another extension of mindfulness practice. So Chris Germer and Kristen Neff, they both came up with the idea of self-compassion because the way we treat our best friends, we don't treat ourselves in the same way.
Yeah.
We are very critical of ourselves, especially women, I have to say. And a lot of times we are much more tougher, and we kind of, are always wanting to do better in a kind of punitive way. And so self-compassion was something, and Chris Germer was my mentor when it came to mindfulness practice. So because he was offering this workshop, they came up with this 8-week long workshop. Then when I did it and I used it in my life, when I was raising my children and I was struggling with my issues, I really could use a lot of self-compassion for myself. And I saw a big difference even with people who I've worked. And so that's how I became a trained teacher. And then there was a long training to become a certified teacher. So I did the whole, and those online workshops on self-compassion, I do all the time. They help people who are dealing with guilt and shame and anger. And it's called mindful self-compassion. So it is, mindfulness is the foundational tool, and then you get into self-compassion.
Okay.
So yeah, so it is a wonderful set of practices that helps, like I said, anybody who is employing self-criticism or anxiety as a way to get ahead, or experiencing guilt and shame, that it is a much more compassionate and friendly way of dealing with life's issues.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So while you made the switch, what were the challenges that you faced? And did at any point you felt like, oh, I should go back to the world of programming? It's easier to fix the compilation errors in a code than fixing a human mind, which is much more complex.
Right.
So what did you do?
Yeah. So the challenges, okay, I never felt like I wanted to go back to the world of programming. And when I did my PhD, it was much more narrow, and it was more than programming, like a research aspect. And yeah, in fact, it was so interesting. Once I made this switch to psychology, I felt like I kind of turned off that part of my brain where, everything was about programming and those kinds of things. And for many years, in fact, I was like that. And eventually I decided, okay, I need to get back to, that part of my training. And then I decided to come up with an app where I used mindfulness, and the app was to teach people about mindfulness and allow them to connect with other people in the world and do meditations at the same time. So I did use my app training, I mean, computer training to work with developers. I didn't write the code myself, but I knew what the logic was and how to, sort of compile all these things together. So I did work with developers, and I did make use of that part of my brain eventually. But I never felt like I wanted to go back to that field. The challenges, Tamanna, were actually of different nature. And many women probably will identify with it. I was also having my children and raising my family as I was getting my psychology degree, and also having my practice and all that. And that was very challenging, because I felt like if I didn't have the family responsibility, I could have gone much deeper. I could have attended many conferences. I could have talked to a lot more people in the field, but time. And also, as you know, for women, half their brain, when they have children that are growing up, half their brain is, gone in managing all those different things, as you must know. So that was the challenge. And so I found that kind of frustrating. I wanted to do a lot of things, but there was no time. And the reason I could do is, of course, I mean, men, we have to admit, even now, we need support from men in order to flourish in our career. And my husband was very supportive, but he had his own career, and he had his own, challenges. So that was a very difficult period. That challenge was hard. But one thing I did was I never gave it up. I decided I wasn't ever going to just give up my career and go to only taking care of children. That I never did. I did scale back, and I did, I hired help, and I did those kinds of things.
Okay.
And it had its own, again, a little bit of guilt about, for me, the guilt wasn't like I'm not taking care of my kids, because that I was doing. The guilt was about I'm not giving 100% of myself to this thing that I love.
Okay.
Of course, eventually kids went off to college, and then I got that time again. And and so mindfulness was very helpful to keep the balance, So that's what I say, that it changed my life. It improved my focus. It improved, the way I balance and the way I made sense of different things. Reduced my frustration and anger. And it was, it made my priorities clear. It helps in making clear decisions.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that's what it did to me.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's good to know that mindfulness not only helped your clients, it helped you also in your life a lot. So my next question is, since pandemic started, it's the women who have, I think suffered a lot, because they are juggling their careers, they are taking care of the kids, and I mean, they are just wearing multiple hats. And in fact, in last 1 year, it's the women who have lost their jobs, or they have quit their jobs themselves more than men. So what is your advice to the woman at this point when they are so burnt out? And, there's also this guilt that they are unable to do everything and, have a good career or have a good work-life balance. So what is your advice to them?
I know that is such a relevant and great question, Tamanna. So this work-life balance, I want to say something. I think we expect work-life balance to be there every moment, every day, every week, but it doesn't happen that way. I think that expectation, in fact, creates more guilt. I think work-life balance, sometimes, you have to look in years, like this year versus next year. So there are times when you may be totally consumed with family. There are times when you will be totally consumed with your work. And you may not be able to pay as much attention to family. How do you accept these things? And how do you still keep your mental balance? That's where I feel mindfulness really comes in handy. Whether you are focusing on family or whether you are focusing on work, that is not something somebody else can tell you. That's something that you have to realize. What is it that's more important to you based on your environment, your circumstances, the other people in your family, and all these kinds of things. I think it's a very personal choice, and go for it. As you are going through it,
Mhm.
If your experience is overwhelming feelings or guilt and whatever it is, I really personally, what helped me was take some kind of a mindfulness class.
Mhm.
And even if you're very busy,
Mhm.
there are classes like the ones I teach, I can tell you that.
Mhm.
Sometimes I offer introductory mindfulness classes, and
Mhm.
sometimes I offer mindful self-compassion classes.
Mhm.
They are at any one time, it's only for 1 hour,
Mhm.
and it goes for 8 weeks.
Mhm.
And these kinds of practices, once you do it, then there is 1 hour every week where you can join my group and you
Mhm.
can keep up with the practice. I can't tell you, any practice that you consistently do,
Mhm.
it brings you back to your center. App I started, it was
Mhm.
called 2Meditate, number 2
Mhm.
meditate.com.
Mhm.
No space, 2meditate.com was the website. And now I have closed the app, but I've started a website
Mhm.
where global meditators come together
Mhm.
and take these classes.
Mhm.
And I urge, at least from my point of view,
Mhm.
I'm going to ask all of you to go to 2meditate.com and just subscribe. That way you will get
Mhm.
notification of my classes.
Mhm.
And I'm not saying it because I want to get more clients or anything like that, because since COVID,
Mhm.
I've been offering these classes free, and I
Mhm.
take donations
Mhm.
after they are done, whoever wants to donate. So
Mhm.
that's not the purpose, but because it has made a change in my life, and I feel
Mhm.
like that's my way of giving back. And that's why
Absolutely.
during COVID time, especially.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's very good to know that, there is something like that. And that brings me to another question that, people
Mhm.
who have mental health problems, should they try
Yeah.
to meditate on their own? Like, there are so many guided meditations on YouTube and people
Right.
just try
Yeah.
themselves, or they should just, learn it from some teacher or take the classes like you're offering.
Mm. Yeah, 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 yeah. So, mental health issues, I have to say, if you have any mental health diagnosis, or if you think that you have any mental health issue, it depends.
Mhm.
If it is anxiety, then mindfulness is kind of, like, has a lot of research has been done
Mhm.
to show that mindfulness helps people with anxiety
Mhm.
and stress.
Mhm.
But if it is like depression or any psychotic element,
Mhm.
then mindfulness may help some people, but you
Mhm.
will have to do a specific program that is
Mhm.
meant for those kinds of things.
Mhm.
There people who have gone through some traumatic experiences, if they are doing mindfulness meditation, the trauma may get triggered. So anybody with these kinds of things, I would ask them to be careful and
Mhm.
cautious, and not to
Mhm.
just do it online,
Mhm.
but to join a class or live teacher. Your question also leads me to another issue, that
Mhm.
mindfulness, people know about it as a stress reduction tool,
Mhm.
or a moment by moment awareness, smell the roses, be aware
Mhm.
of all the good things that are around you and all that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And yes, but that's a very basic level of mindfulness.
Mhm.
And by paying attention to the breath and all these mindfulness techniques that you hear
Mhm.
about and people do, those you can just practice by using apps. You can do guided meditations,
Mhm.
and you can use it on that level. But
Mhm.
the mindfulness that I'm talking about is so much deeper than that.
Ah, okay.
It's a tool. See, it basically makes you aware of your feelings, your thoughts, your mental patterns,
Mhm.
and asks you to simply observe it instead of
Mhm.
getting sucked into the emotions of the moment. It
Mhm.
teaches you how not to react to things and how to use other things effectively.
Mhm.
You can use, better your relationships. You can manage your anger issues. You can
Mhm.
manage all the difficult emotions like envy and guilt and shame in a
Mhm.
much more effective way.
Um,
Yeah.
and I would like to know some of your work that you have done with women in your field.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So first, when I did my social work, clinical social work degree, I worked
Mhm.
in a place called Women Helping Women Services.
Mhm.
So it was specifically seeing women clients, as well
Mhm.
as there was a hotline, and we had volunteers who were working with people, who were women, whoever called,
Mhm.
and I was a supervisor. So
Mhm.
that was the main clientele I was working. And then I joined South Asian agencies in Los Angeles. That's where I lived.
Mhm.
uh, and for whatever 35 years, and now I've been coming to India, and I live both in LA and in India. But so domestic violence victims, that's who we helped. And also any woman who wanted counseling and were not able to pay, they were coming to us. So Sahara and South Asia Network, these were two places where I worked with women. And then after that, in my mindfulness, as I said, self-compassion and all that, I found that women could connect to these things a lot more. I'm just going to stereotype men and women that, women are more self-introspective, they can be more critical, and they connect with these practices a lot more. Men tend to compartmentalize, they don't want to go into, like self-introspection and thinking about deeper issues a lot of times. And women are juggling things a lot more. And, like there's some brain image shows that women's brain are like zig, 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 all neurons are like firing every we are
short circuiting.
Yeah, that's right. So I found that women could connect with these things a lot more. So in fact, I was an expert on Tone Networks, which is a network that addresses all women's issues. They create short videos, like 3-minute long videos on different women's issues. It's a subscription based. So I was their expert. Then in India, there is a health network, women's health network that just started. It's called ELDA Women's Network. So I've been working with them also with mindfulness and self-compassion. Same idea, creating videos and also doing live classes. So working with women, I always find that to be a lot more meaningful, because obviously being a woman and knowing, what kinds of problems women face. ELDA, for example, they work with women who are going through premenopausal, menopausal and postmenopausal stress issues and all kinds of other health issues, including psychological. So, right.
Yes, I'm really thankful to you, Swati, for joining us today and, educating us regarding mindfulness. And I would say that, I would like to close it by saying a very famous quote about meditation, that we don't meditate to get better at meditation. We meditate to get better at life.
Yes, doing life better. That's what I say.
So thank you, Swati. And to our viewers, please like and subscribe and stay tuned for more such inspiring stories. And don't forget to go to the www.womenwhowin100.com and write to us if you have any ideas. Thank you so much. Thanks, Swati. It was a pleasure to have you.